All right, well, welcome to our webinar. Good afternoon. This is Lisa with Newview Trust Company, and we are going to have a webinar today on how to effectively close multifamily deals. We have a special guest for you, but before we get started, we do want to confess that Newview IRA does not provide any investment advice or advice on any products. We are not a fiduciary, so all information and materials here that are provided today are strictly for educational purposes. And we always encourage you to consult with your attorney, accountant, financial advisors before entering into any type of investment. Give you a little bit of background on Newview Trust Company. We are a full service regulated public trust company. We've been operational for 17 years. We have a compliance office in South Dakota, as well as our administrative office here in Longwood, Florida. We currently custody $1.5 billion in client assets, and we have over 10,000 clients. Our goal and what we strive to do is be simple, available, and responsive to your needs. And so much so that every Monday in our staff meeting, we go over numbers. And the most important is, were we available for our clients? So our goal is 98% of the time to have a live person on the phone to answer your questions or be there for you. We also know that we have a very competitive fee structure, and it's been at least 8 to 10 years since we've had any changes to our fee schedule. So again, we look forward to servicing you. And without further ado, we have Kaylee McMahon. She is the apartment queen, and she is here today to talk about multifamily investing. So without further ado, Kaylee's going to come on.
Everybody, thank you so much for taking time out of what is probably a work day and tuning in. So we are going to cover what you can see right here. We're going to talk about a deal that we closed last year. It's called the Lou to May. It's kind of a cute name. And this was in Fort Worth, Texas, and talk about kind of an idea of what it really takes to close a multifamily deal, because I think when sponsors are doing all of the work for our passive investors, they don't have any idea all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So I'm going to cover just some of it, and it won't be all of it. But this is what we're going to be covering today. So a little bit about the team. So I'll talk about myself just a little bit. You can see a little bit of our resume that's on here. This one was an all-female team, which was awesome. That is what our company is about. So when talking about myself and why we do what we do, so far we've purchased over $68 million in multifamily real estate as general partner. So I have other partners, as you can see, on deals. I transitioned from single family real estate into multi. We've got a #1 Leading Ladies podcast that you can tune into about the real stories of how kick-ass women are disrupting their industries and getting to traction. We also have a group in Dallas called WWIW, Women Who Invest Wednesdays, and it's all about us sharing all of the experience that we have about all the different types of things that we invest in, not just real estate, stocks, bonds, crypto, gold. I mean, whatever it is, we all talk about that. But it's a place that women can feel comfortable talking to each other about what we're doing, good and bad. And then also just a little bit about what my why is and what gets me out of bed. I would say the backbone of what we do, or what I do, and the why is something that I'll share. But the 30,000 foot view about it is that we want to create independence and space for those experiencing codependency and toxic relationships. Those relationships hamper their ability to visualize and manifest what can truly be their amazing reality. And our culture models that we're changing the face of multifamily, as you can see, bringing more women into the light as powerhouse operators, key principals, and commercial brokers. Our goal is to create 1 billion female investors by 2030. And I won't go too much into depth on that. You can check it out on our website later, and we'll go over contact info at the end of this. But just to give you a snapshot, that it took a team of experienced individuals. We all had our different skill sets to get into the deal in the first place. That's something that when you're looking at the sponsorship team, as we call it, you're looking at the experience of the asset manager, looking at the experience of, and there's different roles, the key principal, different levels of experience on all the deal sponsors. So you can just see what we all do. We all have different skill sets. Some have more technical knowledge, some have more experience as far as time under their belt, but all of us work together to get this deal done. So we'll kind of go through what it took to do it. So a little bit about the initial offering that was last year. We were able to get into this deal at almost $250,000 under the asking price. So that's great. That's something that you can ask any sponsor when they're doing a deal, to kind of figure out, do you guys negotiate the price down? Because that's always a fun game, to me anyway. But that's something you always try to do, is get it at a little bit better value than what they're wanting the property for. What we did was we offered a 7% preferred return, meaning that investors were getting paid first on this deal. That's not something that you'll see on every deal. But I think nowadays it's actually more common. And then on this deal particularly, we were bringing in over $350,000 into the deal as sponsorship team. What's typical in the industry is about 10 to 16% of the total capital needed. That will have to be brought in by the sponsorship team themselves. We just like this deal, so we put in some more funds. And then this was a small raise when we did it. So there were only 18 spots that we needed filled. Sometimes on some bigger deals I've done in the past, I mean, we'll need 75 investors depending on, what our minimums are. And our projected close date was the beginning of December 2020. And the reason we wanted to do that was because we were only for sure in 2020 what our tax benefits were going to be for closing a deal in that year. As far as the new political climate and things changing, we weren't sure as far as what kind of tax benefits our investors were going to get. So that was something we had to kind of fight for. And I'll cover later why we had to, or how we had to fight for it. Then also there was a cost segregation study. Again, I'll kind of cover that a little bit later. And on this one, obviously underwriting deals and looking at deals when you are the deal principal or sponsor, I mean, we have to look at about 100 to 200 deals before we can actually end up executing and buying something, because there's a lot of deals out there, but they're not really deals. They're just, people that are selling their apartments. So that's really important to us. So in this one, it was really exciting because it was a really, really great neighborhood. We typically buy C-class properties, and different syndicators do it differently. Different sponsors do it differently. But obviously with things happening during COVID and being, we're not able to kind of predict exactly what's going to happen going into a higher class neighborhood with people that are employed by doctors or are doctors themselves. As in this situation, we felt like that was a really exciting thing, but we had to sift through, like I said, 100 to 200. Being the lead in this deal, it took us almost a year to find something that was this good as far as returns, et cetera. So this was interesting too, because there's a historical building that we were purchasing, and that's not something that I'm typically used to, because you want to be able to get in there and get out as fast as possible as far as the renovations go, and changing the curb appeal, et cetera. But on this one, it was just the windows that we had to keep essentially. So that kind of covers why we thought going into this deal that it was an exciting opportunity. And then there's, the whole process of what we had to do to get it done. Now, this changes every single deal, whether it's us, whether it's anybody else that are doing these deals, just to give you an idea. And I'll say some of these things are industry average or norms when you're looking at a deal. So like the 50K minimum investment, that's totally typical in the industry. Right now, what ended up happening, and I'll cover this at the end, but our internal rate of return ended up being at 15. Our total 5-year return ended up being closer to 89%, 88% on this. And these are all conservative figures. If you're actually doing the underwriting and checking the sponsors, numbers, I guess, by doing the underwrite yourself, you can kind of see how we use assumptions that are on the low end of insurance, that are like the high end on expenses and low end on income for projections. You can see our reversion cap right here. This one was so reversion is the exit cap. So whenever you're looking at, what's the market cap rate going to be at the time when we sell? Well, it's kind of like looking into a crystal ball. So that's always a big risk. And so what we did on this one was we basically said, okay, let's assume that the market goes really bad. And on the exit of the property, we're going to have to go up 75 basis points. So we purchased it at a high 5 cap. So we're assuming that basically it will get worse or more unstabilized at the time of sell. So worst case, what can we sell it at if the cap rate is higher? So usually you want to see cap rate compression, that we've done what we can to take the value out of the property and mobilize that into what would be the sales price. So the 70-30 GP LP split, that changes on every deal. It can be 80-20. We've done those. It can be I've done one that was 60/40, but normally it's like 70, 75, 25, something like that. So, but it varies every deal. And then the rehab on this one wasn't too bad, 275K. So as far as setting up, figuring out why this was a good deal for us, mainly it was the market. And it ended up, as we go through the remainder of this presentation, that kind of in a sticky situation trying to get through the closing, returns ended up getting better. So, or projected to be better. We'll see, once that's sold in a few years. But just showing you that some of this stuff is pretty normal when it comes to looking at a deal, but you have to take all these things into consideration, the market, the job growth, et cetera. So that'll get covered a little bit later too. So this is just a little snapshot of what we got into. So we got into an older property. So that's also a risk factor when you're looking at a deal. And so this was actually the reason that we had the opportunity to get into this deal, because the MEPs, everything was replaced and all new in 2001. As you can see, it was restored also in the interiors. So there really isn't much original structure left except for, some of the sticks of the building. And so the foundation was obviously something we were concerned about, but and we ended up having to do two inspections of the foundation because I wanted to be absolutely sure that, different opinions that I was getting, that we completely had the budget covered for what may happen later. So again, just that could be a risk whenever you're looking at a deal that's a little bit older, is kind of checking on the age and the life of all of the parts of the building. So the mechanical, electrical, plumbing MEPs, like I was mentioning, the roof age, but we cover all of that in due diligence, and any sponsor should. But that's just the part of the process. So you basically get it under contract, and then you have this time period of due diligence. And in a commercial deal, if you're not familiar with them, it depends on what you can negotiate, really. More time or less money is always very favorable when you're going into one of these. But our due diligence on this one was 30 days. And sometimes you can get up to 45 days or so. I believe on this one, we end up getting what's called an EAA, or an early access agreement. So that's, again, just another negotiation technique where going into it with, I think, 7 or 8 other offers. So it wasn't a crazy amount of other offers at the time, but to be more competitive, putting down hard money is more favorable. But I'm not comfortable with putting down hard money, meaning that you say you put up 100K day one, and if you find something that doesn't check out and you choose not to close, there goes your 100K. It's gone. There's no way to get it back. So or no, not no way, but typically not very easy to get back. So in this process, an early access agreement we negotiated 5 days of time, of calendar days, to be able to have the crew get in there and look at everything and get imaging of the plumbing and get kind of what we really needed to figure out all the big expensive things that we were going to maybe need to replace. How risky is this? So pending us finishing those 5 days, or to get those 5 days, I think I only put up like 10 grand hard money. And then the remaining of the deposit, I kind of structured it out. So that's another thing that your sponsor has to do, is they have to reduce the risk of the risk capital going into the deal. So it depends on, if the sponsors are putting that up first, or if some of the, if you're in a fund, sometimes it's already put up front first. The point is having to do all that due diligence. It's normal to have like 30, 45 days or so. And so some people want to know information on, something we're under contract on. And for us, I don't actually share information until we have finished the due diligence. And then we're sure that we're going to go after the project, 1, and 2, that all of our assumptions are right in line with what we end up finding once we look under the hood. So again, like I mentioned, when the sponsor is vetting the deal, this needs to be very important to them, is the submarket. So the zip code, then the submarket, and then even down to the neighborhood. So you can see here, the reason that we chose this one was because you can see subject is right around Texas Health, Cook Children's, Medical City, Baylor Scott and White, JPS. Like there's basically like 4 or 5 big hospitals right nearby. And so the tenant base is mostly made up of medical doctors who make 8 times the amount of income, or 8 times the amount of rent, or 8 times what rent is as their income. And there's medical coders, there's someone that works for the city. So I just felt like everybody that was in that building, you want to know all those things. You want to know what your demographics or your tenant mix is. So this is, again, part of the due diligence. Some of this can be done before the property goes under contract, and it should be, for sure. But if you were actually physically in this map, standing there on the block, you'd be able to see that this neighborhood is really nice. And even at sundown, this is just stuff that I'm doing right now, even looking at other deals, 5 or so a week. sitting there at dusk and watching the activity and seeing what's happening and who's coming and who's going. And again, what's our risk here? You can't fix a bad neighborhood. You really can't. You can fix a bad deal if someone, kind of lets it go. But anyway, so again, that's just part of this process that these sponsors should be doing. And so that's something that, if it's not in their presentations or if it's not in their deck or info, you should be asking, because that'll pull the deal completely down. This is why we chose this market. Again, it's really important to have income growth, house value growth, job growth. So this is talking about employment, and a couple of other things, crime decrease, et cetera, over a 10-year period. So you can see why we picked this area. There's a ton of employers in Dallas, Fort Worth, and then you can see job gains by year and how much that metro is growing. So again, it's really important that you do your due diligence on projects like we do, to make sure that there is a demand. Like, what are the economic drivers that are driving people to come and move there? If there's only one major employer, that can become a risk if they leave town, for example. So just some things to take into account. And then part of your or part of the due diligence and part of the project should be that the team is setting up what is their business plan. That's very important. You want to find an asset or a project that is profitable day one, already profitable. And then based on a track record and based on a clearly or a very clear plan that's going to lead to more profit, that would be something that would reduce risk, that would help to make this project more profitable. And you want to see that clear in a business plan. So this is just an example of what we did to put together for our business plan, and that we're going to re-tenant, improve operations. We're going to add carports, lockers, barbecue bench, a lot of things that add income to the property. So again, clear profitability add. And then continue interior renovations as tenants leave. And then our exit strategies, as you can see, main focus was 5 to 7 years. Now we have a track record of 12 to 24 months or so of being able to get in, reposition, and sell the property again. But again, another thing to talk to your sponsors about, and to see the fact that they're going to be looking at the risk of the market changing, at a moment's notice. We can't predict that COVID was going to come. We can't predict exactly like the exit crystal ball. So it's important that there's some kind of what I call a runway. And so we kind of, we tend to over or under promise and over deliver. And so that's something to kind of ask the sponsor about. How are you guys planning this? Why do you think that the exit price should be what you're putting in your numbers or your underwriting? So it's really important to ask those kinds of questions, and know that all this research has been done by the sponsors. Because if this isn't clear, if the business plan isn't clear, I'm not going to say it will fail, but I don't think that there would be as much accountability if all this work was already done and it was very clear. And again, another thing too is to ask about the prior track record. And typically, not always, but typically, if the project, the type of business plan that's being done is something that those sponsors have already done multiple times, and they have experience of dealing with there's constant things that will happen. People die, floods, arson, so fires. It's constant. People live in them. Stuff happens. So having somebody that's done this type of reposition or this type of deal before is always really good to have on a project. So it's important that they know what they're doing, essentially. So this is just an idea of what we were showing for our exterior plans for the building. So right now, as you saw, it's like this really ugly green and red, kind of like a Christmas throw up is what we call it. And we're going to not only re-tenant and add income producing amenities to the property, but also be able to reposition the outside or change what we call the curb appeal. That's really important to be able to show everybody that's on the block, everybody that lives in the building, like we're serious, and we're going to be making these changes soon. So again, being very clear on when you're looking at some kind of multifamily investment, that the team has spent all this time having all this prepared for you to look at once their due diligence is finished. And they have, like I said, a clear plan. There we go. All right, so let's talk about the challenges. So this is I guess the fun stuff. And it was kind of fun why I say that is it was fun because two of the other sponsors, Carolina has been involved in multifamily before, but as a limited partner, and Deep has been involved as a limited partner, but also she had been involved in small multifamily. So neither of them had quite the amount of exposure I've had to kind of all the risks and all the crazy stuff that happens. So in this situation, as I mentioned on the first slide, we came in and the property was overpriced. everything in the market really right now is overpriced. We're, I think, on a bubble right now. And so that's just what you're going to be dealing with because people are paying outrageous prices from each coast coming in. So that was something that we had to get through that challenge of justifying that we needed to reduce the asking price. And like I said, we got it down $250,000. It's pretty good, right? But again, it takes some negotiating, and you can't have sponsors that are shy or who are just willing to say, "Oh, I'll just pay whatever price just to do a deal." So it's got to actually you make your money on the buy, right? So then our lender, oh my gosh, this was a crazy situation, and all the limited partners, like they don't know that all this stuff is going on because it changes like every day. We have weekly calls, even a CRM set up to talk to the brokers, et cetera. But we had a lender that we were dealing with that is Hunt Capital that normally does large multifamily loans, so Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans, but they take quite a while to originate. And without going too much into the weeds, basically the loan that we had to close in 2020 because we had told all the investors that we were going to be doing a cost segregation study that was going to be getting us $900,000 in year one of total depreciation because it accelerates into year one. And so that's some major tax benefits for all the owners in the deal. And the lender basically drug his feet on a lot of things. And we also were surprised in the middle of actually after we applied for the loan, we got accepted to start moving forward with documents and whatnot that Freddie Mac changed their criteria for us sponsors as after we had already basically qualified for the loan, if you will, to where they required us to add an additional person that had even more multifamily experience. And by the time we closed the loan, basically we were going to be a month off from their requirement anyway. So we had to get a waiver. The waiver was something that also slowed down the process of the loan. We got the waiver approved. And so long story short on the loan, we ended up having to be able to do what we said we were going to do. And so I was able to leverage a personal relationship, flip the loan from from multifamily Freddie Mac into bank debt. And so what we're going to do is we're going to end up needing to refinance into a better rate in 6 to 12 months or so after we're done with renovations. But again, what that ended up doing was that boosted the returns because we're going to refinance out and then be able to distribute that cash to all the investors. So, sticky situation and got down to the line on not being able to close, in last year's calendar year. But in the situation, we were able to figure it out and leverage those personal relationships. So it's really important that your sponsors, their experience because things happen like this all the time. And it kind of is what it is, but we were able to get that bank loan closed in 2 weeks. So crazy, but we did it. I said I was going to do it. Foundation repairs, again, that was something that we had several contractors. We had 3 come look out, 2 inspections done. And normally my guys that I hire, they just do a good job, but they were just saying some questionable things. And again, with the age of the building, it was really important to make sure that we had budgeted for what we were going to need for repairs in that due diligence period. And so we ended up getting some conflicting reports and then getting a more experienced individual to get out there, which again drug out our due diligence process. We had to get more time and pay for more time, et cetera. But that's totally normal. Actually, I'll tell you that you got to look, or you can look in the, I believe it's the PPM or the company agreement. I'm pretty sure it's the PPM, but or you can even ask the attorney of the sponsor. What we do is we normally bake in at least 2 15-day extensions that are just automatic because this kind of stuff happens. Sometimes we have people that are using their IRA accounts, or they're using an account that has not been funded yet. And that's really important too, is that, your custodian, that they have your funds from maybe like a prior employer, et cetera, that you already have an account open with them and that your funds are already in that account, because that can also cause us to not be able to close on time on the deal just because we're waiting for funds to come in. So if your account is open and it's funded, you're ready to go into whatever it is that investment that you end up choosing out there. But point is that we had some extra time we had to add to it. Also, in the very beginning, we had a conflict of interest because the attorney that we normally use to do these projects was actually representing the seller. So representing the seller and us as well, it was a conflict of interest. And we were actually able to work out an agreement where we could basically share a fee. But I actually didn't feel comfortable with that because I really do think that it's best to have, 2 separate minds, working on this. And so we ended up going with an attorney that I actually had been wanting to work with for a while. And he actually, in the end, saved the deal when we had some other complications. We had a old property manager, and I will admit this was my mistake, that they found out that we were using a new company because I said something about like automatic door locks or some kind of technology that they were not using, and I didn't realize that. But I said that that was what I wanted to do, and so they kind of got the hint that okay, we're going to be switching property managers. So they became completely non-responsive when we needed them to help open up the property for more inspections. Again, don't do that. Like try to keep it to yourself, I guess, because what you want is you want complete compliance from any person that's in place until literally the week of closing, and then whoever you have in place, then they all need to kind of be introduced. And honestly, getting access to any kind of data that you need, I could go on for days about that. Would be helpful, that you need to get it done before closing, because after closing it's not happening. And you need that data for future sales and for the newer system that you're putting in, et cetera, for the property management software. So anyway, they found out, and they kind of just didn't help very much. We were able to have either the broker or myself go to the property and open it up several times, but it could have been a lot easier. And then we had this, I hate to use the word jerk, but we had tenants in common. So a 1031 exchange that was coming into this deal. And that has a whole new set of rules that I'm not going to go over, but basically that 1031 that was coming in, they had to have an intermediary. So that intermediary is basically like babysitting the exchange at a third party location or at their exchange company. And then, or actually it's at title, my bad. So they are the one though that is kind of managing that. So it goes from, it goes from their intermediary and then it goes to title, but it doesn't get released until certain things are met. And so there's a communication level that has to happen between the sponsors, the person bringing in the 1031 exchange into the syndication. And the guy just was like, look, I am being paid $100 period flat to do this. And I don't want to talk to you. Like I kept hearing that. My partner kept hearing that. And it made it really difficult for us to figure out our ownership percentages, make sure that the voting percentages were all correct as far as like the equity that was going to be moving in, because you can basically get all that wrong and then trigger the tax that that person was going into the syndication to get away from in the first place. And so then there's no point. So anyway, that was a challenge that we had to deal with, and I just kind of had to have my attorney talk directly to that individual, because luckily for us, Dugan has had this last year alone, he's done $200 million in tenants in common, or TICs, which is moving that 1031 into a syndication type transactions alone in 1 year. So he's able to be creative and again work around some of the sticking points that this guy was having and saying, well, we can't do it that way. He found all the can'ts, and Dugan found all the cans, so it's always good to have somebody on your side that's very experienced in whatever you're doing. We definitely leverage our team. It's not just us. But we were able to get through that. Also, like I mentioned, figuring out the tenants in common, or TIC, equity ownership was bizarre. Like it was very hard. And even the freaking day of closing, when we've already had multiple phone conversations and we had everything negotiated between us partners, and we had raised the capital in accordance to what was remaining or left over after she came in. And the day of closing, literally the guys having another problem and saying, so what's the amount that we're wiring? And we're like, oh, I thought we agreed it was this much, and then he goes, no, based on the calculations, it can only be this much. And we're going, are you kidding me right now? So again, luckily, we just had me reiterate what we already talked about before. Again, keep your emails, make sure that you have all of that information, or because it's not like a true agreement. It is between the party coming in, but not us anyway. So there's a lot of risk there taking in those kinds of people. But we got really fortunate, or we're very fortunate that Deep, when she came in, she was very calm, very reasonable, didn't freak out, because things are like this every day, all the time. It's just how this stuff goes. And again, our limited partners have no idea all this stuff is happening behind the scenes. And because it's our job just to get it done, I guess. But there's always each deal. I've been through much, much worse than this. But just giving you some ideas of kind of what can happen. And like I said, mentioning the extensions, that some investors, my first couple of deals kind of thought it was crazy that we had to extend 15 days and then extend 30 days. And so I just want to share that that's totally normal, because there's always challenges that are happening. We had a deal during COVID where the bank locked up and we couldn't even go with that lender anymore. And so we had to do a master lease on the property and then kind of babysit it until we could get another loan. I mean, you just have to be able to be creative. Then again, like I mentioned, then we got to that new lender that we did end up closing in 2 weeks, but they were having major problems with adjusting for like random vacancy. Normally, what we do is we go in and say, okay, what is it vacant today when we're buying it? Then we're going to add at least 10% vacancy and then about 5% bad debt. So assuming that there's probably, unpaid people that we're going to either deal with in that transition or just because of based on experience, let's just say that. So then the lender was adjusting for another higher number in vacancy that didn't make sense. And the property historically had never seen that much vacancy. Again, like I mentioned, the property in this situation was filled up by doctors that are employed by the hospitals that are nearby. So there's no reason in my mind that they would just all disappear overnight. So anyway, point is that was something that we had to pull up additional reports. The broker even had to get on phone calls and give us more comps. And we don't use comps like in single family, but more cap rate comps, and then more vacancy comps, so they could see at least how the other buildings that were running nearby were working. And anyway, I could go on forever. And like I mentioned, extensions and extensions had to happen. But again, that's just something that we have a built-in. I'll tell you 10-day extension that. In my letter of intent, that is, if the lender literally says I want another extension, they can have it. So we have that built into there. As far as our due diligence days don't start until we have X list of items delivered. So that's another thing that we do. And then again, automatically building in extensions because stuff happens all the time. So getting through this closing was challenging. But I'll tell you what my partner said about it at the end of the day. So this is what Carolina said. She said, Ludame is the first apartment I've been part of the purchase of as general partner. Knowing residential real estate, there are a lot of big differences. You need a whole new team. I've learned a lot so far, and I'm excited to keep learning. The best part of this deal was having a woman-only team, and we're helping other women to invest in real estate and become financially independent. And Deep said, women belong in all places of opportunity and value creation. Real estate is no exception. With the new online world, there's more opportunity for women to collaborate on a large scale investment project. I believe the team's complementary skill sets, ability to support each other is what got the apartment purchase to a close. It was a tough deal with many unexpected turns testing the team. No deal was not an option for this team. Personally, it was a great learning experience working with the talented team of go-getters that have a never say die attitude. And that's true. I mean, even she had to pull out all the stops in the end. And here's another creative thing that we did. If you end up being a principal on a multifamily deal later on in life, or even right now, it doesn't matter. Something that you can do, and what we ended up doing was, the lenders won't love this, but if you, for example, are putting in a certain amount of capital into a deal and you are one of the active deal sponsors and it is a recourse loan, then you can ask for the lender to limit your liability. And that was something that we learned even doing this closing, that we could do that. And then in addition to that, if you are an active deal sponsor, the sponsors can actually add a second level guarantee to somebody somebody that doesn't want to take on more liability than their initial capital investment. So anyway, point is there's all kinds of ways that these twist and turn, and it just takes a team that's experienced, a team that can pull on, honestly, a big, huge group of professionals in our team that we trust. And not just this team, but we have a large network of lenders, brokers, insurance agents, contractors, property managers. I mean, all those people, it's really key to see that they've worked together before with this team. So yeah, that's kind of going over what we had to do to get this deal done. I just wanted to share some crazy stuff that you got to be aware of right now. Again, having all these challenges happen, that's totally normal. But right now I'm just seeing people that are making crazy decisions, seriously, because people have been, I think, pent up or whatever it is. But there are savvy investors out there that are going into blind pool funds. These funds have actually been in Florida. And so they're more of in a conservative state, and they had been able to raise $1 billion in a blind pool fund during COVID. So crazy stuff is going on out there. And again, like I mentioned earlier, when you're looking at these deals, it's really important to do your due diligence and ask questions. But you should have 3 gold standards when you're looking at any kind of investment that you're looking at, if you want to make sure that long term that it's going to give you, it's going to not self-destruct or basically fall apart. And those are that, like I mentioned, that the project is, whatever this project is that it is presently profitable day one, and it's clearly making profit on the day of closing as well. You want to make sure that there is a playbook and a business, which is a business plan that blatantly shows a clear path to greater profitability and doesn't depend on the equities market or the stock market conditions, and that has hard evidence of past performance. And then third, absolute operational excellence and proven expertise will and can drive the project's profit. So those are the most important things when you're looking at the due diligence process, the team's experience, et cetera, that help to mitigate some of the other things that are coming, some of the other unnecessary problems that are in addition to these ones that we just covered, which are, like I said, kind of normal, just kind of things happen, and all you can do is fix it. But again, there's unnecessary risk that you could be exposed to if you're not at least considering those three things being a part of whatever investment you're getting involved in. I want to go over a really quick case study just to show you, like I said, you want to see a track record. So this was the first property I ever got involved with, 18 units purchased in Dallas for $1 million. The property was managed by a single family management company. We fired and hired a management company that was focused on more than single family. Again, you want an expert in the area that you're hiring them in whenever you're doing any kind of investment. Most residents at the time were Section 8, and they paid about $125. The city paid the rest. The average rent was about $600. The property was completely trashed, and there were no improvements for 10 plus years. There's drug dealing, prostitution rampant on the property. So we evicted some tenants. And again, this is that re-tenant process because you look at the tenant mix. Other leases were not renewed. The property policy was changed to not accept Section 8 housing assistance. The entire tenant base was changed. So it's always a challenge, and it's always a lot of work. We started renovations on this one. It was a pretty heavy lift. So we started investing $10K per door on the interiors. It was $180K total. Invested $100K on exterior, fixed everything, barbecue grill, pergola, added controlled access, security cameras, painted the property, and added cedar planking around the railways to give it a really nice modern look. We do that a lot. And so we built, this is the fun part. We built 12 storage units on the back of the property. Which was going to cost us about $20,000. And what this did based on the cap rate of the property is this increased the value like this, $120,000 based on, like I said, that cap rate. So you can see how this is kind of on exit. So the deal I showed you before was something that we closed last year. We're still active in it. And then this is on the backside after it's closed. So doing those value add things like storage lockers and carports and things that bring in income, this is the kind of great things that it can do on exit to the value. We increased those rents on this deal, $950, and then bumped them again to $1,100 once all the renovations were completed. And then we sold the property in 13 months for 1.8. So that was a pretty exciting deal. And I just wanted to show you kind of what it would look like. And again, all these things can change as far as what the entry price, exit price, if there is no Section 8, we've done a lot of deals that don't have Section 8. That's actually most of what we do. Anyway, this could vary quite a bit, but just to give you a snapshot of what a value add idea or deal can do, and that there's always going to be problems. I mean, the challenges we have with crime, the challenges we have with things, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So it's really key that you have, like I said, experienced individuals who have done this before and can help mitigate the risks that are in addition to just the normal risks of doing the deals. So if you guys would like to contact me, I believe, go back real quick. If you guys would like to contact me, ladies and gentlemen would like to contact me, this is my name, Kaylee McMahon, and there's my phone number. You can text or call me. If you want to check out our website, I would say that's probably the best place to go start because there's a lot of information there, how everything works. There's even links to YouTube. So it's going through multiple interviews of all the different team members that we use, what they do, pros and cons of multifamily investment by itself. I guess I'll also open it up to Q&A. If anyone has any questions right now, and now would be the chance. I think that we're going to be taking the Q&A in the chat
Q&A.
box.
We're going to go ahead and take the questions in the Q&A section if you can do that for us. To start off, I do have a question here. It's asking, what are the advantages of investing in multifamily over single family? So maybe like the top 3 or something like that.
Yeah. So biggest one I would say, well, that's not the biggest, but a big one is multifamily can give you the tax advantages, like I mentioned before, of a bonus depreciation in addition to a depreciation. So if you have a single family asset, you can get your normal depreciation. But like on this one, the deal that we covered, not the case study, this one was going to get us $900,000 in year one total depreciation. So it's depreciation and bonus depreciation. And this was under the old Tax Cuts and Job Act. That law that has not technically been changed yet. It's supposed to be this year. We'll see. But as of right now, and for the longest time, that's been a huge advantage. In addition to that, if you're, depending on if you're an active partner, or if you're a limited partner, if you're a limited partner in one of these deals, your returns are usually much greater than if you are leveraging a house and then you're doing an SFR, single family rental. I have another presentation I've done where it breaks down in a chart, comparing leveraged, unleveraged, and then to multifamily. But typically our annualized returns are about 20%. And typically our sale returns are about doubling the investment. So it's about 100% of what you put in. So you'd get your capital plus another like 100% back on top of that. So usually the returns are better, but like I said, as a limited partner, you don't have to do anything. You literally just take the tax advantages for your ownership percentage. You get mailbox money and you don't do anything. And I guess the third biggest thing about multifamily is that the economy, when it changes, everyone still needs housing. And so even when, houses become like they are now crazy expensive, I also own a real estate brokerage in residential, and my agents are like, we cannot help buyers get into a house right now because they're spending, just their offers are like 16, 20,000 over, asking, and it's not going to even appraise for that. So point is when people either need 20% down to get into a house, they don't have it, they'll go to apartments. If they, are trying to buy something and they need to move and they can't, they'll go to an apartment. And apartments are pretty steady as an asset class. So year round, instead of it being cyclical, where like people go to school and it goes down, and Christmas time it goes down, pretty much all year round people are buying and selling. And so the industry stays pretty consistent. I guess those are the top three.
Okay. We do have some more that came in. How is collateral handled to minimize risk?
I don't understand that question. How is collateral minimized to reduce risk? Is that what it was?
How is collateral handled to minimize risk? So is there any type of collateral maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the property itself is the collateral, right? So whenever you're getting a loan, these are not things that we are purchasing outright with cash at the moment. That may come in the next 6 months or so, but right now, the bank has a lien on the property. So as far as them having the security of the property itself, that, the bank obviously has that. As far as, us as partners and limited partners, really it's the business income and then the experience level of the individuals that are operating the deal that is the collateral. As far as what your returns are. Collateral for, I guess I just don't quite understand the question, like whose collateral? Is it for the bank? Is it for us? Is it for the limited partners? To exactly know how to answer that, Drew. So if you want to type back in, I'll come back to that.
Okay. And then we have somebody that says, I think it's great that you have a focus on empowering women and teaching them multifamily investing. That said, are you open to male investors?
Oh my God, yeah. And if I could show you right now, I would, but I don't want to mess this up and screen share and whatever. But even last night, I was writing up the pledge. So what we do is, yes is the answer, but we just have a pledge basically that is having men be a part of our mission and part of our objective, which is to create 1 billion female investors. And so they have to select a woman in their life, whether it's, their niece, their wife, their whoever, it doesn't matter, and then teach them exactly what they're doing, pros, cons, why they got into it. So I wrote out the actual pledge last night. And then when we have our quarterly investor lunches and we have an update, we get to choose their documents, or their quarterly report goes into our investor portal. And then we choose at random one of our investors to do a spotlight on them and the woman that they're teaching what they're doing. And there's no age minimum. And if you're investing and wanting to have someone involved who's like 4 years old, for example, you could even set up like a trust and invest using that trust and have the trustee be that female. There's a couple different ways that we're able to get help on our mission. So yes is the answer.
On the Dallas case study that you showed, when did you purchase, and trying to understand if purchase prices have increased in recent times?
Oh my God, they have. Yeah, that was 2014. So it's been a minute, but Yeah, it definitely has. So for example, though, I mean, I've got a property tonight that I'm going to go do a dusk stakeout on. And this is one where it's about as nasty as that first one was. And I normally don't do stuff it's that heavy of a lift, but if you can get it at the right price. So for example, for that one, I can't do the math in my head or whatever, but I think whatever it was, 18 units for $1 million, whatever that price per door is, I think it's like 55K or something. Um, there's a property now that's about 10,000 more than that per door, which is really cheap. But what I'm going to do is, because the area is a little iffy, but it's exactly like this kind of deal. It's just larger. It's 51 units. I'm going to make an offer that's basically at the same entry price as we did on that deal. And I mean, if we can get it in at that entry price, again, you make your money on the buy. It'll be a slam dunk. So it just depends on what you can find.
Okay. And how important is location in multifamily investment?
It's very important. And on the deal that I mentioned here, that was the real small one, Luda May, that location was the reason I felt really comfortable going with it, because it was surrounded by a B plus plus or A minus community, and it's a C class deal. So it's really important that our residents have walkable distance to Rar and Sons Brewery. There's a ton of dining and shopping nearby, which is something that I normally don't deal with when it comes to these C class properties. So that was something that I feel like it'll actually be a really good legacy property. That's what we're going to end up doing with that one. Um, anyway, so it's very important. And even, during these time periods when I'm touring tons of deals, that's probably the third most important thing. What are we getting it for? How many units? Is the area at least one class higher than the property that we're buying? Because then it will for sure always appreciate. So very important is the answer.
How are apartment owners protecting themselves from possible rent losses as a result of federal eviction moratoriums?
So protecting themselves against losses, first of all, for what we've done is just been very proactive. So for example, in March when all this hit, the first thing that we did was to figure out, okay, who's been a long-term tenant, how can we go right to them and work with them and make sure that they know we have a payment plan. They know that if we actually did this to all the residents, it doesn't matter, all the different resources. And I don't know the link off the top of my head, but we have some properties that are in more of like a rural area and some that are more in the city. But each different area has their own program that has part of like the government grants and we all ended up getting. So for them to know how to access those, also if they were unemployed, or if they, like I said, lost their job, unemployed, how they can apply for unemployment insurance, if they needed, SNAP or any of those kind of government benefits, what URL to go apply at. So we were just trying to put it right in front of them exactly what they're going to need to be able to stay paying residents, essentially. And so far, that's worked really well. The newest moratorium has been the only one that we've started to get people that I think are seeing that this is just like the new norm, and they're not. They're starting to give us some pushback, but unfortunately, we're very proactive. And so, talking to the local judge about evictions, like this most recent moratorium still allows for evictions, still allows for us to charge fees, still allows for everything. Basically, they just gave us a letter that says, I've experienced some kind of hardship because of COVID, but we do require them to show us what that was and why, and then offer to help. Because it's not that you're just going to send us a letter and say, I'm not even going to pay $1. Like, that's not okay. That's not a resident we want to stay in our community at all anyway, So being proactive is the answer. And then also having extra cash reserves. We have taken money that we are going to distribute to the investors, and normally some elder people that I know in the industry that have been in the game longer than me, they normally put about $1,000 a door aside in addition to the bank reserves. And in this situation, we just said, well, let's just double that. Let's do 2,000 a door. So that's what we have done, and all I can do is really speak from my experience right now. And so far, we're doing okay.
So we're gonna go through one last question with you, and then anyone else that has asked a question in the chat, feel free to reach out to Kaylee directly or to me directly if it's in regards to self-directed side of it. All right. So last question. Are you able to easily raise the large capital to close on time? And are there times when you are not able to close on time?
Yeah, so I don't, I think that might have been covered under some of the things that I mentioned in here, is that technically on time is, the original closing date. So for us, it was November something, like right around Thanksgiving. And so, like I mentioned, we have automatic 15-day extensions built in based on us putting in more earnest money. We have to pay for it for sure. So we do typically see extensions, whether it's, like I said, because we're waiting on certain people to finish their subscription documents and wire in money. Typically, we don't wait for that. But then also sometimes, like we had a delay on our inspections, things do happen. So for sure, we do have extensions to be able to finish raising the capital. And sometimes, and I hate to say this, but it's just the honest truth, is that sometimes when we have had our like big deals, that we had like a $9 million raise, for example, the raise is never easy. I'm starting to partner with some bigger private equity firms that are going to make it a little bit easier for us. But I really do prefer to take individual investors, because then those life-changing returns individual families get to experience. It's not just going to, like, the Goldman Sachs of the world or those big companies. I want it to go to individual people. But so it's not easy. And then, yes, there's always extensions for the most part. But sometimes, like I was going to say, like a Freddie Mac loan, for example, they don't require you to come to the closing table with all of your acquisition and development raised at the same time. We have to have enough for the soft costs and then the acquisition and a portion of the development costs. And we can continue raising for a window after we've closed. Just like, so for example, we have investors all the time that are on vacation or something like that. And they're like, oh my God, I missed the offering. And it's like, well, we just closed, but we still need, this gap covered to finish funding all of our renovations. That's never the smartest thing to do, just because you never want to get caught without having the funding you need for the renovations. Do not take it out of the rents. That's what we call like a slumlord. Those are the people I buy from, that they thought that they would renovate out of the cash flow. Don't do that. So anyway, yes, I think I answered that question.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Kaylee. A lot of good information, and you had her contact information if you want to reach out to her. If you are interested in discussing more about self-directed IRAs and how to invest in real estate using your self-directed IRA, we're happy to help you do that. You can text SDIRA, your first and last name, to 484848. You can also contact us at the number on the screen or at newviewtrust.com, or email info@newviewira.com. So look forward to hearing from you. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.